Welcome to the Astrology Hub podcast. I'm Amanda Walsh, founder of Astrology Hub, and your host for our flagship show. We explore the many ways astrology can support you in your relationships, career, health, and personal growth. Thanks for tuning in. Hi there, astrology lover. On today's podcast, you are going to meet two incredible human beings. You're going to meet author, teacher, and living sky astrologer, Adam Gainsburg. Many of you are already very familiar with Adam's work. He's been on the podcast several times, and he has also been an inner circle astrologer with us. He's just an amazing astrologer, teacher, author, and he has so much wisdom to share. And the perspective that he's going to share today may be a little bit different than what you've experienced from him through Astrology Hub in the past. He is joined today by one of my dearest friends on the planet, a true soul sister, Katherine Zorensky. She is also an author, a teacher, and the creator of the Living Tantra podcast. I met Katherine when I was living on the big island of Hawaii, fresh from New York, just like a deer in headlights, not really knowing what I was doing. I met her about 11 years ago when I was pregnant with my second daughter, Sophia, and we became instant friends, raising our daughters together, helping each other through many different ups and downs of life, and just having some really amazing experiences and adventures together. The connection has always been so deep and soulful, and it's kind of like one of those dream come true moments to be here, introducing her to all of you and allowing her to share her amazing wisdom with all of you here today. So you are going to learn what Katherine and Adam mean by embodied astrology. What is this word embodied? It gets thrown around a lot. What does it actually mean? And how can it help you take your astrology practice beyond charts and technique and into a true lived experience? You're going to learn where astrology and Tantra. So maybe, I don't know what your experience with Tantra is, but probably not the kind of more superficial, popular idea of Tantra, but a very, very profound understanding of what Tantra is and how astrology and Tantra actually can come together in a beautiful way to help you align with your path and help you feel more alive. You're going to learn the true definition of desire and why your truest desires are meant to be lived and shared. And also, contrary to popular opinion, how one of the least selfish things that you can do is to actually commit to living your desires. And again, maybe not the way you think of the word desire, but a whole different orientation with that word and with that sensation of desire. You're going to hear several stories of how Katherine has helped me personally through some extremely challenging moments in my life, and how she taught me to alchemize painful experiences into one that offered deep riches. And my hope in sharing these stories, especially if some of you are going through really, really hard times, is to help you understand how these could be some of the most rich and valuable experiences of your life, and how Tantra and alchemy and astrology can come together to help you experience that. You're also going to hear Adam share one of, if not the best definition of astrology that I've ever heard. And you know, I've talked to a lot of astrologers at this point, and I just love the way that he talked about astrology and defined it. And I think so many of you are going to relate. These two are truly a dynamic duo, and I cannot wait to share their wisdom with you here today. Enjoy.
Thank you, Amanda. Wonderful to be back.
So good to be here.
Yes.
Both of you.
All right. So let's start with your story, Kate. Tell us about how you came to this moment and how astrology became a part of the work that you do.
Absolutely. So Amanda, we share, besides a friendship, we share incredible birth stories from the big island of Hawaii. And for me, I was initiated into the work I do through giving birth to my daughter in the Pacific Ocean under a full moon. And what that afforded me in those moments of birth was all the veils lifting, opening my body, my heart, my entire experience to literally receive the stars in me and through me as I gave birth to my daughter in this very, very sacred place off the big island of Hawaii. What that initiated in me, I had no idea what would unfold from there. There was a lot of suffering, a huge dark night of the soul that I went through, as what I had been opened to was bumping up against relationships, paradigms, constructs that were in my life that simply did not fit who I was. They were born of survival mode. They were born of who I thought I needed to be loved, to be approved, to fit into my parents' pictures. And what I had chosen to open to through that experience had a far greater life force than what was being held in place that was false. So after a few years of deep, deep dissolution, I emerged more innately into my purpose, which was really having been given a map of feminine embodiment through the womb, through the yoni, through the process of birthing. So how this relates to astrology, I remember it was about 2 years ago, I had my first astrology reading with Adam Gainsburg. And while he was reading my chart, I was having this experience in my body of feeling more here. It was like his words were calling forth my essence more alive in my body as he was speaking. And this was really resonant to what I had experienced in some of those moments of birth, of being informed by being spoken to from the voice, the resonance of that light from where I came from, and feeling that activated in my being in a way. By the time I met Adam, I had released a lot of my buffers and my filters to where I could receive his words in a more direct way. You know, I didn't need to be blown wide open in the same way. And I really started to understand that what I had been cultivating kind of from the inside out, you know, working with sexual energy and refining sexual energy, understanding at its purest expression, it's simply desire. It's us being informed by that our soul is gravitating toward, because it's ours to experience, it's ours to learn, it's ours to express in this life. So I had really been cultivating this from the inside out, and really committing my life to following my desires, even if it meant, you know, looking like a fool, completely letting go of what I had thought was important, letting go of relationships. And as I did that, there was tremendous support from the universe for me to simply keep growing and emerging. And so when I met Adam and, you know, had that initial meeting, there was some recognition in my body and my being that a lot of what he was bringing was the same thing I had been cultivating from the inside out. He was just bringing it, you know, from the top down. So then we have Sky Body.
Kate, you are very humble. It's an incredible story. And I mean, she didn't mention the dolphins as she was birthing that ushered her to the shore. I mean, the story is just incredibly enchanting and magical of that birth in the Pacific Ocean. And but one of the things you didn't mention is all the work that you've done helping other people to really find their authenticity and really step into leadership positions. And you work with very high level facilitators and teachers and leaders in the world. So can you tell us a little bit about that work that you've been doing for the last 10 years?
Yeah, I'm people keep me very secret. I'm sort of, for those that have huge reach, they keep me in their back pocket, because one of my capacities and gifts is really to keep people anchored in truth. And so when we are constantly addressing and being honest with our shadow, with the darker aspects of ourselves, there's less of a need in our reality to have that reflected to us. So for a lot of these high profile leaders, I mean, we have found so directly that there is an experience that shows up maybe from their audience or in their world where they're getting projected on, they're getting accused of things. And when we go into session together and do the very, very deep work of finding where the root of that trigger is still lying within them, that's creating that external experience, and release it. And that's a process simply through embracing the intensity of the emotion held around that. It's a very, very sort of deep, soulful surgery that happens.
You have recently started a podcast called Living Tantra. So tell us a little bit about that podcast and tell us a little bit about your work with Tantra, because I know that a lot of people in our audience are interested in that.
I just released my podcast, Living Tantra, and my wish with this podcast is really to demystify Tantra. You know, Tantra in the Western world is seen as there's a lot of sexuality implied with it. There's a lot of like maybe loose boundaries. In a lot of ways, it can seem very unsafe. And then Tantra from the Eastern perspective is a spiritual science. And there's not a lot of heart or humanity necessarily in it. So there's two extremes sort of in the ways that Tantra is portrayed. As I know Tantra, it is merely a transparency with life. It is our availability to receive and allow life in us and through us. And in that receiving of life, not only do we get changed, do we get forged, do we get opened deeper into our hearts, into unknown places within us that we didn't know we had, maybe not so pretty. But we also change our world, you know, the field around us, because of our availability and our presence, begins to change. So Tantra is I found a really beautiful definition of it. That which extends from the body and includes everything. And that really encompasses my direct knowing of Tantra. Living Tantra, the podcast, is really my attempt to convey and share everyday mundane stories, you know, of I'm not a tantrika that lives in a cave. I am a mother, I work, you know, I am engaged in life and how life itself becomes the path. I fought for so long. I wanted to be a seeker. I would have been totally happy in this life, sitting in a cave, meditating. And I just kept getting kicked back out into life, into partnerships, into parenting, into work. And when I finally accepted that that was my practice, that whatever life was bringing me was exactly my practice, as opposed to needing to subtly manipulate or control or direct it. And I'm still learning this. I just said this to Adam yesterday or this morning. And this is one thing that astrology through his lens has really brought me, is that embodied sense of I am connected to something that is me, but through me so much larger than me. And in that I can relax. I don't need to make life happen. Life is happening as me and through me. And the more I can rest in that experience and stay open to it, the more I'm exposed to all these little places where I was holding on to life or trying to make it happen, or, you know, believing that I was somehow separate from the cosmic dance, believing that, you know, and everything that's appearing in life, you know, you guys both know me well, the challenges and the goodness, it's all part of the dance. And it's how we hold ourselves in the center of it that affords us the availability to receive the blessing through both.
I'm so grateful the universe kicked you out of the cave, because I got to meet you and we've gotten to have so much fun being in the world together. So thank you, universe, for that intelligence. Adam, tell us a little bit about well, first of all, if you want to give a little background of your work, but most of our audience knows what you do, but I'd still love just a little bit about what Living Sky Astrology actually is, and then how you and Kate came together to create this sky body astrology, as you're calling it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah. First of all, it is so good. It feels so good to be back and sharing with the Astrology Hub community. Thank you, everyone. Living Sky Astrology, Amanda, is one of the, I guess, monikers underneath my kind of overall work, which I call Soul Sign. And so Living Sky came from this slow at first, but increasing frustration as I was developing my astrology practice, finding where people could benefit most from my work, whether it was through one-on-one work, whether it was through lecturing, writing articles, leading intensive workshops, whatever. As I was finding where I kind of fit in that, I found that there was a kind of frustration in people wanting to remain in their intellects, in their minds, in order to better understand themselves through what's on the chart. So the kind of example I give here is like, here's me, and here's my chart. This thing here is how I'm going to understand myself in here. So this thing out here is going to tell me who I am in here. That's wonderful starting out, but at a certain point, you got to drop that. You got to start living it. You got to start like putting it to the test. So this idea of living sky was, I found, Amanda, that most astrologers at the time, these days it's definitely getting better, but at the time it was most of us astrologers were chart-based. We were quite uninformed about sky astrology. Like, for example, everybody knows what a sun in Gemini means, but what does it mean if you have your Venus very far from the Earth compared with Venus very close to the Earth? What does it mean when Jupiter is super high and bright or Jupiter is totally invisible? That affects the astrology. So there's this whole element called sky. There's the chart, and then there's the sky astrology. And that's what I was promoting. And me with a couple of colleagues, Gary Caton and Julene Lewis, we created a couple of conferences called Sky Astrology Conference, in which people came and we taught about how to combine chart-based astrology with the sky. Essentially, Amanda, what sky gives us is a more embodied, felt sense of our planetary positions and our transits. It's communicating to us somatically, less intellectually. Okay? And so that's where I kind of come from. And meeting with Katherine and finding her incredible depth of wisdom, the power that you mentioned, Katherine, and integrity, it was like, we just kind of like, hey, you want to do something together once? If you want to just kind of put something together once? It was really like just listening and just following what was obvious to me. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, let's talk a little bit more about sky body astrology. Like what does that mean? What does that look like in everyday life? Give us some like tangible examples.
Great. Well,
actually, wait, sorry. Adam, did you want to start with what is astrology? And or did we want to start with desire?
You know what? I have this thing about the somatic origin for how astrology works.
Okay.
I think your folks are going to really love that.
Okay, how about this? I'm going to do, hold on.
Sure.
If I asked you about desire, would that lead you to that?
Yeah, totally.
Okay. All right.
Totally. And then Katherine, you can come in off of that.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, one of the things that you taught me, Adam, and there's these moments on podcasts or during some of our events where an astrologer will say something, and it's almost like I see a highlighter in the sky, just like highlighting something that I really need to pay attention to, and that I remember forever, think of how many interviews I do. Like, I don't remember a lot of things, but then there's these statements where I'm just like, whoa, that was profound. And I need to like dog ear that, as if I was reading the book. And one of the things that you talked about was the root origin of the word desire and how it comes, is Latin. This is where the details get a little fuzzy, but Latin, decidere, and that decidere means of the stars. And I went, oh my gosh, that explains so much. These desires in us are actually leading the way. They're like, they are the path. And it's written in our birth chart. Like it is of the stars. And I think part of the process is learning the difference between desire and craving, or that kind of superficial level, which I'd love if we could talk about that a little bit. But that was just one of those moments where I went, oh my God, that changes my relationship with desire, and it connects it with astrology, which is the coolest thing ever. So can we talk a little bit about desire? Because I know both of you work with that really deeply in your work. And Adam, let's start with you. Like you had that realization. Let's talk about desire and astrology and how that all comes together.
Yeah, I did have that realization in 2001. The title of my first book is literally The Soul's Desire for Wholeness. And what I was playing there with is, we all know about human desire, human wanting, craving, like as you say, but what would the soul want? What, like the soul, most people think of it as my essential self. The soul as the thing that incarnates in and out of lives, that's consistent. But what would the soul want? And I started to play with that, and that's all explained in the book and my courses there. Desire, as you say, is of the stars. What we call astrology today actually rests on the shoulders of probably a 40 to 60,000 year old tradition on this planet, where human beings had no maps or charts. They were not going to meaning making to make sense of the lights in the sky. They were having visceral body spiritual experiences of these lights, and specifically, which is where astrology comes in, how those light positions change over the day or the month or the year or the 10 years. So that living relationship with, yesterday morning it was over there, now it's there. Oh, I noticed that something's happening in my life. I'm kind of over explaining this, but that's how it really was. There was a transmission up from the sky. So when I take that etymology of desire, of or from the stars, I take it as, or I ask the question, what am I wanting? What are we all as humans wanting? We're wanting to live what we are. We're wanting to experience life, our creations, our successes and our failures, as and from who and what we are. In other words, to be me fully. But this is not some kind of narcissistic ego, I want to feel me, and it's all about me, and what can I do for the planet? It's none of that. This is much more deeper and transcendent and totally imbued with humility and like selflessness. That's where desire really comes from. And in the upcoming program Katherine and I have together, we're going to go much deeper into this etymology, where desire comes from, both linguistically and also in the body, developmentally. We're going to go into a lot of this, but for right now, it's like desire always means I want to be in constant discovery and embodiment experience of who and what I am.
Adam, what you're saying resonates so deeply. And I recently had a similar realization, because you hear stories about the Hawaiians and how they had this relationship with nature. They were so in tune with nature. They, rocks were alive, and there's stories of aunties who could go out and to the ocean and open up their apron and call fish in. They would call them in, and you hear all these stories that feel so mystical. And I had this realization of it was not in their head. It wasn't a belief. It was a knowing. They actually experienced it. Yes. And for us, so much of the time, it feels like such a leap. Like we're learning about it philosophically and in our minds, because we're not having those visceral, tangible experiences where we go from believing to actually knowing. So I'd love to hear, Kate, I'd love to hear
Yeah,
your
I was
reflections.
just going to say it is visceral. It's the moment we start putting faces or objects or numbers or pictures on our desire, we've lost the innate aliveness of our relationship to desire. Desire is living. Desire is a commitment to living in that fire in our hearts and letting that guide us. And this is where, our ego or our mind so often wants to, like I said, put pictures on where it's taking us or what it's going to look like. And the moment we do that, we're no longer in the moment with our desire being guided. And there is no destination with desire. It is a commitment to being forged deeper and deeper and deeper into love, into the truth of who we are. And that's the only destination. And within that, all kinds of connections and expressions and opportunities for us to live who we are show up, but that's not the goal. That's not the end point.
So do you think that astrology in any way throws us off from that? Or how do you see astrology coming in? Because I do know that the tendency is to get in our heads and to get really, wrapped up in technical details. And do you see that as like a necessary part along the path, and then it eventually shifts? Or do you see it as like a divergence that takes us off that true path of desire?
Both. It really depends on our starting point as an individual. If our starting point throughout our lives has been our intellect, then astrology, and we find inside of us an interest in astrology, we're going to start there because that's how we know ourselves. Orienting to something new, I'm going to go into my intellect, into my smarts, into my memory, into my ability to compare, contrast, to assess, to discern, all up here. But eventually, if you stay with it, you're going to come to the end of it. You're going to come to the end of the ability of the mind to create meaningful astrology for yourself. If you're starting out more, not like visceral, more somatic, more intuitive, more felt sense as when you go through your life, then you're going to naturally gravitate towards the astrology that describes that. But I would just point out, and this is a very, very basic principle of the evolution of consciousness. Wherever we start in a new endeavor, it is often just our starting point. Evolution demands that universe grows. So if I'm starting in my mind, astrology can bring me into my body, into my heart. If I'm starting more visceral, more somatic, sensorial, then astrology can totally bring me to the magic, the incredible power of higher intellect, higher experiences, deep, deep, refined understanding that can only come through everything from my neck up. It can't come from down there. So it really depends on our starting point and what our particular evolutionary track is as a soul in the life. But Amanda, to your question, it can absolutely be a scapegoat for taking astrology can be a scapegoat for taking responsibility. Astrology can be an excuse for not emotionally maturing. In other words, continuing to blame life and blame others for what's happened to me. You can justify anything at all with astrology, and that's kind of the downside of it, but it's how it's used by its practitioners. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about why you're so inspired. Like, what do you see in the people that you do this work with, in the work of really embodying astrology? Like, what does that actually, like, first let's just start, like, what does that actually mean?
Right.
Like, because we actually throw it around quite a bit. I don't want to say throw it around, because I do it intentionally, but the word embodiment, I feel, has gotten a little bit cliched. Like, it's like embody this, embody that. Well, what does that actually mean?
Yeah, great. Awesome. So I have a whole teaching on this, but essentially, how do I want to describe this? It means that the experience I'm having, even if it's just hearing some information about my chart from an astrologer, that the experience I'm having actually becomes completely integrated. In other words, it becomes invisible to my normal awareness. It becomes so thoroughly me, the fabric of how I make decisions, how I fall asleep at night, what dietary choices I make, what relationship choices I make. It just becomes totally enmeshed in the fabric of my life as an individual. That, to me, that's what embodiment really means. So with that as the bar, or that as the definition, you can see it takes a long time to actually embody something. In other words, the joke I make is having huge spiritual downloads, big healing energy or emotional openings, huge big failures or successes in my 3D life. Those powerful movements of energy through me in different levels and frequencies and circuits, that doesn't mean I've embodied anything. Embodiment means you actually completely surrender to this as who and what I am already and originally. I've just now remembered it. And so it becomes seamless. It's a big word I use with embodiment. It becomes seamlessly me. And unfortunately, Amanda, talking about this, as you found, like throwing it around, like talking about embodiment, well, I kind of have a sense of what Adam's saying here, but does that mean, you see, I'm already going up here and asking the question, does that, it's...
Totally. I'm like, give me some examples. I need some stories. I mean, it's exactly what happens. And that's why Kate's work has been so powerful for me, because she would talk about these things and talk about Tantra and, and I was like, God, I think I get what you're saying, but only in having really visceral experiences with her. I mean, there was one time where I was so upset about something that was happening. I was feeling, jealousy, and I was overcome, I was like paralyzed with emotion. And then I was doing the Capricorn thing where I was trying to control my environment. It was like, okay, I'm feeling things that are really uncomfortable, so I'm going to try to control everybody. Like, hey, I need you to say this to me, and can you please stop doing that because it's making me uncomfortable. It was like this frenzy of trying to avoid what I was feeling.
Yes.
And Kate magically, miraculously was there and was like, let's go, like took me outside and had me breathing into my kidneys, experiencing everything. She was holding me, and physically I was able to like feel the full range of everything that was happening in me.
Yes.
And through that, I had the downloads.
Yes.
It was a different order. It wasn't like, oh, I'm having this inspired moment and I'm having a download. It was like only in getting in my body and actually experiencing the fullness of what was happening. That's when I opened up to the ahas and like the realizations of what was actually happening. I could see myself kind of from the outside, but also be feeling myself from the inside at the same time, which was really fascinating. But it was a very powerful moment. I know, I can see you want to say
something. I want to bring up a really important factor here in connection to desire and being available to our experience, and that's safety. So
yes,
safety is what allows us to relax enough within ourselves to be able to open, not to our projection of what's happening, not to the stories that we're running in our heads, but actual reality in the moment as it is. And Adam, as you were talking about astrology and entry points and all of that, I do feel that there's a way that understanding one's chart can bring a sense of safety. Like, oh my God, this is why I have such an incredible temper. Look at all this fire I have. There's a way that when our mind has a certain understanding, we relax deeper into ourselves, then be able to open more somatically to an experience. Desire is not something that we can give into if we're not safe within ourselves. We all have huge manifestations lists that we want to enact in our lives. And are we truly safe enough to receive what it is that we desire? And so, Amanda, the story that you shared, literally all I was doing was holding you down, being with you to be able to create enough of a safe space so that you could open more to the power and potency of the energy moving through you and emotions, and be in that experience. And in that experience, you were receiving you. You were receiving the intensity of you, and you were held in a way that was safe enough that you could stay in the center of it.
That's embodiment, Amanda. What beautiful, Katherine. It's being who I am, receiving who and what I am, the power, the intensity, the brilliance, the light of me. That's embodied.
Oh God, so good. And it's true. And what you just said, Kate, about the chart and astrology, it's almost like we've been talking about the cosmic mama, like the cosmic, mother. It's almost like she is saying, like, she's playing the role that you played for me very physically, of like, you are okay, you are safe, you are exactly the way you are is perfect and divine and intelligent in and of itself. And so then you're right, there is that relaxing in, okay, if I'm good, as I am, I can open up and receive more of that. Mm-hmm. There's another experience that I had with you, Kate, that I feel like could help us illustrate this even more. And I've mentioned it several times on the podcast, that when I was going through my divorce, I had these moments of intense loneliness. Like, oh my God, I'm so lonely. Like, here I'd moved to Hawaii with my college sweetheart, with our two girls. And now I'm on this island, like, by myself. Like, what am I even doing here? I'm so lost. I don't even know. Well, I could start crying right now thinking about it, because it was so intense of like, I came here with my family, and now I'm like in the middle of the Pacific Ocean by myself. Like, what is going on? I feel so lonely. And I remember speaking to you briefly at the time, because you were in Europe and we weren't as connected at this time frame, but you saying, go to the depth of that loneliness. Like, don't try to bypass it. Like, feel as lonely as you could possibly ever feel. Like, go into it. And I remember going, oh my God, what? Like, all I want to do is get out of it. Like, I don't want to be in this. It's horrible. It feels so awful. And you were like, no, like, milk it, like, go into it and feel it as much as you could feel. And I did. And when I allowed myself to do that, and just, instead of like, anytime I felt lonely, trying to distract or call one of the few people I knew on the island, or, try to like get myself out of it, I was just like, okay, I'm just going to feel what lonely feels like. Whew, wow. This hurts. Like, it hurts really deep. And like, what's under it, I felt like I could get to some well of treasure underneath that. And so that's another experience I've had with you, where I've gotten to experience it. And is that embodiment? Is that what you are meaning by embodiment as well? Or can we kind of take that thread?
So that speaks, yes, that's embodiment. That embodiment speaks to our transparency. How available are we to open to our experience as it is, and let our experience forge us? This is where we trust life exactly as it is revealing to us as the way through. We let go of how we're manipulating, how we're controlling, and we say, this is what is here. I'm opening myself to this. And this is where and Adam's open heart work is exquisite with this, really unlocking the intelligence and the wisdom that is held in our emotions when we are safe enough within ourselves to really allow the experience of them. As you just touched on a minute ago, there can come a point where we almost start to experience a pleasure in whatever it is that we're feeling, even if it's sadness, even if it's anger, even if it's hatred. And that moment of pleasure, in my experience, as soon as there's pleasure, duality starts to dissolve. There's less againstness. In pleasure, there cannot be that opposition. And that's a level of resolution within our beings, where we have alchemized our experience into some sense of union. That's Tantra. That's an expression of Tantra. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting because, again, going back to astrology and charts, Adam was actually sharing some transits with me last night. And one of the things he was reflecting to me was not something I really wanted to hear, like some challenge, some potential, perpetual challenge that I know I may still be facing for the rest of the year. And I can use that as an excuse of like, that's why this is happening. Or I can use that as an invitation to go, okay, I am going to open myself to this head on, knowing that this is part of my design. This was written in the stars. And this must be some sort of attunement within my own being that I have really come here to know and understand and fully feel the experience of in my body. That's embodiment.
I love that example of how we can use the information about upcoming transits or potential challenges that we may be going through that the astrology can show us, and reframing it instead of bracing against like, oh God, this might happen. Is this going to be really painful? Or trying to even figure out. I know for myself, sometimes it'll be like, I know a transit's coming. It's like, I start to immediately try to attach a story like, oh, it's going to be this, or, oh, it's probably this part of my life, which normally I'm not even right anyways. But what you just said is instead inviting it as a opportunity for deeper alignment with that path that is written in the stars, and to really embrace it instead of brace against it.
Yeah. And we embrace it, Amanda, because it actually brings us a piece of ourselves, brings a piece of us home. And in that, we feel more whole. We feel more full in who we are.
I began to really focus on desire, whenever that was ago, when I realized that transits are, there's many different ways to say this, but transits are the universe's like update email to us saying, this is who you are now. This is who you are, but you keep denying it. These transits are now the way that you are meant to realize your desire, capital D. Everybody, like not desire like, man, I really want to be able to eat a chocolate cake every day for the week. Not that desire. But the desire, as I was saying before, about who and what I actually am, transits. If I can just bring in something else here, Amanda, I just realized it connects. My personal transits, when I'm living them and open to them, like Katherine said, head on, you open yourself fully to them without, as you said, Amanda, without going, oh, it's going to mean this, it's going to mean this. When I open fully to my transits, what I'm actually doing is I'm engaging my desire or purpose personally, my personal, what I as an individual soul, what I'm here for. And when that happens at a certain, let's say, electron shell, like when I have enough momentum behind doing that. In other words, I'm not just dipping my toe in the water, which we all need to do. I resisted this for at least a decade because I was way too scared and refusing to admit how afraid I was about not knowing what's going to happen to me. Okay. But once you have enough embodiment of this, amazing thing, your personal purpose, the feeling of being on track in your life, universe is showing up with grace and synchronicity. What starts to happen is you start you start to get senses. And this is not just me. This is a lot of clients I've worked with, that this personal purpose that I'm doing here, that's my journey, is actually collective purpose. It's not just for me. It's not limited to my happiness and my success and the effect of my actions on the world. It actually is it's a piece among many, many, many others. So that's where, for me, the intersection of personal and collective dharma or purpose really come together. The only way to really live my contribution to the collective unfolding in truth, beauty, and goodness is to completely commit myself head on, face on to my desire.
Wow. I mean, Adam, why is it so scary?
Right.
Why don't we just do it?
Millions and millions and sorry.
Yeah, it does. Totally rewrites our programming around how we serve the collective. And this is the time that we are in right now. Literally, our individuation is what feeds the whole.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Yeah, that's what the world's needing. We're not needing more rules from organizing bodies that try to direct, control resources. What we're needing is people to say, I don't want this anymore. No resentment, no emotional baggage. I don't want this anymore. I'm making a different choice now. I'm going to live more this way, or I'm going to go over there to do my life there, or in this different mode. That's what exactly what Katherine's saying. I could not agree more. The world is depending now, humanity is depending now on individuals empowering themselves. We are the authority.
Well, and I'm seeing how this embodiment piece is so key, because if you think about that story I told earlier, where I was uncomfortable and the situation wasn't going the way I wanted it to. So my default was to try and control and change it. So that was like a microcosm of what's happening in the world, because as things are happening around, everyone's like, okay, we need more rules. We need to control more. And really, the invitation is to feel more, experience more, align more with what it is we came here to do. Because when we're aligned with what we came to do, we are serving the greater whole. And I've seen this, and I know so many people in the audience too have seen this, like almost like a tapestry. And each one of us, or a symphony, I sometimes think of a symphony, but each one of us has these notes to play, or these colors to weave in, or these patterns to contribute. And when we each do that, there's something that actually really works. And this is where the divine intelligence that is so beyond any of our understanding really comes in. And because it's so hard for us to understand, it's like all we have to do is our role in that. All we have to do, and like you just said, there's a lot in that. There's a reason why it's so hard for us to do. It just seems like it would be easy. It's like, oh, well, let's just live our desires. Hello, that's awesome. Why is that so hard?
Yeah, this is where embodied astrology really gives us a navigational reference in our experience of, yes, I can feel that I am connected to what is me beyond this body, to what brings me alive. And what brings me alive is what is informing me toward becoming more of me, toward my purpose.
Okay, let's talk about the free webinar that you two are offering. For anyone going, whoa, this is amazing. I want to learn more. I want to know more. I want to feel more. I want to experience more, all these things. Tell us about the free webinar that you're offering, I know, in just a short time from now.
Go for it, Katherine.
August 29th, we are offering a free webinar to speak a little bit more about desire and the connection between desire and empowering our desire and us emerging into our purpose. And then we're going to take you into a brief visceral experience of this, so that, again, it's not just our words informing you or maybe reminding you of something that you knew, but you can tangibly touch this within your own body and your own experience.
You'll get the benefit of the things that I've gotten to experience. I'm so thrilled to be able to introduce you, Kate, your work, and to combine it with Adam's work is just like, whoa, the potency of that combination is really beautiful. So I'm just excited that this is happening and that our community gets to participate in it. Adam, is there anything you want to add about the webinar coming up?
Yeah. Even though our starting point one of our starting points, probably, I think, will be astrology, as it's normally thought of. The webinar is really, as Katherine's describing, is meant to give people a direct experience of their current availability to being and touching, tasting their own desire. So the experience we're offering as through the whole webinar is a kind of honesty check-in. This is where I'm at in my relationship with the capital D desire that I am, that I'm here to live. I would just add that.
When we approach desire, we also have to approach everything that desire is not. And this is where, as Adam speaks to this honesty, this is where we really come up against, what are my superficial wants and needs or demands on life, as opposed to what is deeper desire and how does that feel and live in my experience.
I've also quoted you on the podcast before, Kate. Kate is my dear friend who at one point told me that truth is sexy. I was like, ooh, I like that. It's like, and it's like edgy, there's like something about it. It's like, God, can I be that truthful? Can I be that me? What would you say to people who are feeling called to this and feeling excited about it, but also nervous and scared? Because one of the things you brought up earlier, Kate, when you were going through your process after your birth, is that who you were becoming was bumping up against the life that you had already built. So what do you say to that? When because I find that usually the things we need to do, there is that maybe ego protection around like, oh God, this might mean change, and I don't know if I really want change. So how would you speak to that?
Yeah. So every single course, every single offering that I bring, if people approaching it are not feeling some level of nervousness or fear, they don't belong. Fear is a necessary guardian or initiator that we meet when we are ready to move beyond the paradigm that we've known. And it's our willingness to open to the experience of our fear that is actually what makes us available to move beyond into something new. So bring your fear, bring your nervousness. If you're feeling that, then it's an absolute yes. Your mind doesn't need to understand why you're interested in this or logically put the pieces together. If you feel it, come. That's your desire speaking.
One thing I wanted to maybe add here. I'd like to offer everyone here in Astrology Hub my definition of astrology. For me, astrology, well, let me just start out. Let me contextualize this. Normally, when we're studying astrology, we learn that astrology is the scientific art of correlating above and below. That's what we learn to do. My definition of astrology is a human activity that identifies how light has become densified as the physical universe, so that the performance of astrology with good intentions for our clients and students then results in an active invitation or an active revealing of how that light is meant to unfold through us and it literally enlighten the universe back to its original light that we are all encoded with. And this is not just some kind of new agey woo-woo thing, light I'm talking about. Remember what I talked about? Sky astrology. Embedded in human genetic memory is our intimacy with the lights that we physically see, and the lights of other kind of phenomena like comets that we didn't understand back then. So this is light as we not only physically see, but that we feel in our hearts. to me, this is what I've been doing astrology a long time. This is what I've kind of come to. Astrology is the decoding mechanism to find out what it is we're actually doing here as light, love, desire. That's why to come to our webinar.
Whew, that's just like a standalone statement that I want to put everywhere. It's so beautiful. The other thing I was thinking,
use it, please, everywhere.
Yes, everywhere. The other thing that I was thinking as you were speaking is when each one of us lives that to the fullest extent that we can see each other's light in its purest form. And when we see each other's light, it even emboldens ours even more.
Yes.
So it's just this beautiful constellation of things happening all at once. I absolutely love that definition. That is just,
yay.
I've never heard it said any better. Really, that is just brilliant.
And
so
this is not just Adam's definition. This is something he lives.
Right. Right. And that's why the words had so much potency.
Yes.
It's because you can feel what you're saying. It's not just a construct or a really pretty idea. It's actually lived. Oh, you too. Amazing. Thank you so much. This has been such a pleasure. For those of you who want to join the free webinar, you can go to skybody.us/webinar. That's skybody.us/webinar. We're going to put that in the show notes. We're going to put that in the description of this podcast. So you can check it out, see if you would like to join the free webinar. There's going to be more opportunities to work with Katherine and Adam, and they're just an incredible dynamic duo that to me is like their union in terms of working together is completely written in the stars and so fabulous for all of us. I'm so grateful that the universe has brought you two together and that now I get to share you with our community. And I can't wait to hear how you all experience it. So please stay in touch. Let us know if you'd like to hear more from Adam and Katherine. And this has just been such a pleasure. Thanks to both of you.
Thank you so much, Amanda, for the time and your incredible generosity. You know, the first time I met you on the podcast, you have, in this way, you absolutely have not changed. You are this brilliant, brilliant energy ball of positivity and love. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh my God.
Amanda, thank you from my heart for your support of us in this endeavor, for your recognition of what we're doing, and for your love always.
Oh God, what a fun time. Thank you so much. And thanks to all of you for being here. Thank you so much for being a part of our community. And thank you as always for making astrology. Hopefully you have a kind of a different idea of what astrology actually is, for making astrology a part of your life. We will catch you on the next episode. Take care, everybody.
Hi, this is Becca Tarnas.
And I'm Rick Tarnas. And we're really looking forward to teaching an upcoming workshop here at Astrology Hub on September 21st.
If you want to be the first to know when registration opens, make sure you're signed up for the Cosmic Insider at astrologyhub.com/insider.
We look forward to seeing you there.